Good Thursday morning. I'm Guy McPherson of Nature Bats Last. You can find Nature Bats Last, the blog, at guymcpherson.com. If you go there upon seeing this video, you will find papers that I'm going to refer to, so you can make sure that I quoted them correctly. Or you can do further research yourself, because I'm not going to take the time to read those papers to you. Basically, the bottom line is this: there's no going back. We have passed so many self-reinforcing feedback loops, so many so-called tipping points on the climate front, that there is no going back. This from December 22nd, yes, that's been a while now, December 22nd, 2021, from phys.org. Title is "No Returning to Climate of the Past, Even with Carbon Dioxide Reduction." And here's the lead paragraph. While the entire world focuses on achieving carbon neutrality, zero carbon dioxide emissions, new research shows climate change in some regions is inevitable, even if the already increased CO2 level is reduced. As CO2 decreases, the intertropical convergence zone, which I'll refer to in the future as ITCZ, Intertropical Convergence Zone, shifts southward, which can trigger persistent El Nino conditions. As we know, listeners of this channel, an El Nino Southern Oscillation event means that heat is released from the world's ocean and into the atmosphere. From the paper again, El Nino refers to a phenomenon in which the sea surface temperature near the equator rises by 1 to 3 degrees C above the surrounding conditions, causing droughts, storms, and floods around the world. Again, reading from the phys.org paper, the ITCZ, which hardly moved when the CO2 concentration increased, sharply shifted southwards when the CO2 level decreased. Even when the CO2 concentration was returned to its original level, its center still remained in the southern hemisphere. And that's the bottom line here. This is something called hysteresis, and I'll get to that shortly. The shift of the ITCZ, where 32% of the global precipitation occurs, think about that for a minute, nearly a third of the global precipitation occurs in the intertropical convergence zone, is an extremely important factor in determining the amount of precipitation in the tropics and subtropics. The shift can change the Hadley circulation, the starting point of the global atmospheric circulation, to cause abnormalities in the global climate. The bottom line is a quote from the lead author of the peer-reviewed paper that I'll get to shortly. Quote, "The already emitted greenhouse gases have lasting effects on the planet, so we need to recognize their long-term impacts as well as their immediate effect on climate change." Yes, indeed, we do. And here's the paper from Nature Climate Change, published December 9th, 2021. It's called "Hysteresis of the Intertropical Convergence Zone to CO2 Forcing." It's by Jean-Song Koog and 8 other scholars. And it refers to hysteresis in the title. I suspect some people might not know what that means. The definition is, from physics, a retardation of an effect when the forces acting upon a body are changed, as from viscosity or internal friction, for example. Here's the bottom line from this paper. I'm not going to quote from it. You can find it and do that yourself. There is no mention of the aerosol masking effect. The latest paper I know that deals with the aerosol masking effect is from June 15th, 2021, Significant Underestimation of Radiative Forcing by Aerosol Cloud Interactions Derived from Satellite-Based Methods by Gia and colleagues in Nature Communications. And it indicates that there is a 55% increase in global average temperature, when we lose the aerosols that industrial activity puts up into the atmosphere. That's 133% of an increase over land, where most of us live, and 33% over the ocean. There's also no reference in this paper to a December 2nd, 2014 paper by Ricky and Caldera called "Maximum Warming Occurs About 1 Decade After a Carbon Dioxide Emission." And I referred to that paper and included a link in my climate change summary, my long essay, last updated many years ago. So if you want to track down that paper, you can find it right there. So, no mention of aerosol masking. The evidence indicates that there will be about a 1.1 degree Celsius global average temperature rise in the wake of Las Vegas masking, and no mention of the 10-year lag. And yet, this paper goes on about the hysteresis, or the amount of heating already baked into the system, pun intended. Okay, there's more. Of course, there's always more. From Science Alert on January 18th, 2022 comes a paper titled "The Sixth Mass Extinction Really Has Begun," Scientists Warn in Recently Published Study. From the Science Alert, "The signs of death are everywhere if you look. For years, scientists have rung the alarm bell, warning that grave declines in animal biodiversity around the globe herald the onset of what will be Earth's sixth mass extinction." Actually, it's at least the eighth, but details. Despite the looming weight of evidence to suggest this grim phenomenon is unfolding all around us, not everybody agrees. Well, of course not. There's a lot of stupid people out there. This from lead author of the peer-reviewed paper to which this Science Alert refers, Robert Cowie from the University of Hawaii in Manoa. Quote, "Drastically increased rates of species extinctions and declining abundances of many animal and plant populations are well documented, yet some deny that these phenomena amount to a mass extinction." That's the direct quote. He goes on, quote, "This denial is based on a highly biased assessment of the crisis, which focuses on mammals and birds and ignores invertebrates, which of course constitute the great majority of biodiversity." Yes, indeed. Most of biological diversity on this planet is comprised of small things, things like fungi and plants and, as indicated here, invertebrates, not the things that we all take for granted that are beautiful to see, like the big mammals, for example. Even the esteemed IUCN Red List of threatened species, arguably the world's foremost record of species extinctions, is skewed towards birds, mammals, and amphibians. Of course it is. The Red List is highly biased, Cowie said in this paper, and his colleagues. All right. Going on. Current extinction rates, notably in terrestrial invertebrates, are far higher than background extinction rates. That's a direct line from the paper itself, from the peer-reviewed paper. We also show that use of IUCN Red List extinction data to determine current extinction rates inevitably leads to dramatic underestimation of rates, except for birds, mammals, and perhaps amphibians. These findings are reported in Biological Reviews, the peer-reviewed paper. I'll get to that shortly. It doesn't help that Shell's massive carbon capture plant is emitting more than it's capturing. So think about that for a minute. Shell Oil built this enormous and enormously expensive carbon capture facility that uses more carbon than it actually captures. This according to a headline at Vice on January 22nd, 2022, and subsequently many other sources. The original source that these corporate media referred to is a report from Global Witness, found that the carbon capture facility has the same annual carbon footprint as 1.2 million gasoline-powered cars, and it doesn't capture anywhere near that amount of carbon. We can't stop the planet's next mass extinction event, researchers say. That's the correct headline from a CTV news article published January 19th, 2022 in Canada. And here's the lead from that article. Quote, "Not only is Earth in the middle of its next mass extinction event," I'm not sure how it can be in the middle of the next one. It's in the middle of the current ongoing mass extinction event, as reported by Edward O. Wilson, now deceased, in his book published in 1992. Here's the lead again. "Not only is Earth in the middle of its next mass extinction event, but it may be too late to undo the harm inflicted upon the planet's species." This is according to a new study assessing evidence of what it calls an ongoing extinction event. Why does it call it an ongoing extinction event? Because it's an ongoing extinction event. It's not the next one. The paper was published in Biological Reviews, an open access journal. And the journal article is titled "The Sixth Mass Extinction: Fact, Fiction, or Speculation," and it was published January 10th, 2022 in, again, the open access journal Biological Reviews. I'm going to read just a little bit from the abstract. Although considerable evidence indicates that there is a biodiversity crisis of increasing extinctions and plummeting abundances, some do not accept that this amounts to a sixth mass extinction. Often, they use the IUCN Red List to support their stance, arguing that the rate of species loss does not differ from the background rate. However, the Red List is heavily biased. Almost all birds and mammals, but only a minute fraction of invertebrates, have been evaluated against conservation criteria. Incorporating estimates of the true number of invertebrate extinctions leads to the conclusion that the rate vastly exceeds the background rate. The bottom line from the abstract of this paper: denying the crisis, simply accepting it and doing nothing, or even embracing it for the ostensible benefit of humanity, are not appropriate options and pave the way for the Earth to continue on its sad trajectory. Well, you got that right. We mustn't merely accept it. We must change our own lives, starting with our emotional changes, our intellectual changes, in coming to grips with something over which you and I have no control. I've referred to the historical background rate, and the commonly accepted rate for species extinctions in the absence of a mass extinction event is one species out of 1 million every year. So one species in 1 million goes extinct every year. That's the historical background rate. We are way above that number at this point. Now, the United Nations Environment Program indicated in 2010, August of 2010, as I recall, that we were driving 150 to 200 species to extinction every day. And that number is found to be conservative. So we're now driving more than 200 species every day to extinction. That's not 1 in 1 million. That's considerably more than 1 in 1 million. Finally, another peer-reviewed paper and its precursor, its lead to it, from New Scientist on February 1st, 2022, titled "Extreme Marine Heat Waves Are Now Normal for the World's Oceans." The subhead: since 2014, more than half of the ocean surface across the globe has recorded temperatures considered extreme compared with a historical average. The lead: the world's oceans passed a threshold 8 years ago as marine heat waves became the new normal due to climate change, with research showing extreme temperatures recorded across more than half of Earth's seas since then. Marine heat waves, such as the blob of warm water in the Pacific Ocean between 2014 and 2016, can cause algal blooms, coral bleaching, and mass die-offs of fish and birds that feed on them. While scientists have projected that heat waves will become more intense and frequent under future climate change, it is less appreciated that they have already gone from a rare phenomenon worldwide to common acceptance. Kyle Van Houten at Duke University and Kisai Tanaka at the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, have now found that 2014 marked the first year that more than half of the global ocean surface recorded temperatures were considered extreme compared with the historical baseline. Just 3 years later, such temperatures covered a high of 60% of the oceans. The figure was less than a fifth in the 1900s. Less than 20%, now up to 60%. Says Van Houten, the lead author of this paper, quote, "Our new index of extreme marine heat shows the global ocean crossed a critical barrier in 2014, and it's now normal. It's arrived, it's here," end quote. While the oceans as a whole crossed the threshold of 50% only recently, some oceans hit it much earlier. South Atlantic passed this milestone in 1998. Says Van Houten, again the lead author of this paper. That was a long time ago. I think that's really jarring. So, that article refers to a paper in PLOS Climate, PLOS Climate, that stands for Public Library of Science. And this particular public library refers to climate. The paper is titled "The Recent Normalization of Historical Marine Heat Extremes," and it's by Tanaka and Van Houten, published February 1st, 2022, again in PLOS Climate. The abstract starts with this line: climate change exposes marine ecosystems to extreme conditions with increasing frequency. So again, we're there. It's not something that is in our future. We're in the midst of a sixth mass extinction event for at least 30 years, as reported by the father of biological diversity, Edward O. Wilson. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to this channel, and you can become a member for additional perks at as little as 99 cents a month. Click the bell if you want to be informed of future videos on this channel. Mostly though, thanks for watching.